On Wednesday morning, I get up early every morning, but I get up early and leave the house just a little before 6:30. And I go over and pick this character up, Tom, and last week, Sue too. And we go down to Shanty Olmsted, go down Beeline, the Geisela turnoff, over the hill, down into the valley, and arrive at Shanty Olmsted, Rom's Organic Farm. Well, we're claiming some of it too now. But it's just a wonderful experience. When we get down there, we go through the gate, we pull up in front of this red metal building, that's the shop. And if we go in that shop, we see lots of machinery, tractors and tools and all of that. But up in this one corner by the side door are two refrigerators. And when you open those two refrigerators, they're just bursting with seeds, one after another after another. And those seeds don't look like much if you pour them out of the packet. They're pretty nondescript. They really don't look like much life, but they are seeds ready for life. They're dormant yet, but they're ready for life, particularly because they've been kept cool, they've been kept dry, and so they're going to be a very viable seed that's going to produce fruit in the long run. We talked last week about the soil and the soil of consciousness. So that seed and the soil are the beginning of a cycle. We take the seeds and we walk out of the shop and walk across to the nursery. Nice, long, beautiful building. And in that nursery, there are trays of some sprouts up, some in the soil, but we don't see them yet. And there it is that the miracle of new life begins. When we go out there, we take that soil, that good enriched soil, we put it in the little 6-packs. I put my little finger down in just to the depth where the seed's supposed to go. We drop in the seed, cover it, and nothing seems to happen for a while. But it does in time, in perfect time. And if you follow that cycle of growth, you'll know that the seed turns into a little sprout, a shoot that comes up. Then it has a couple of leaves, and then it gets some true leaves, and eventually it goes out into the garden. And in the garden, we go on and we experience the growth of the plant. We tend it, we weed it, we water it, we train it a little bit sometimes. I say we, I'm not the expert here, but I'm learning. And then eventually we see a blossom. And then we see fruit, and it grows, and we harvest it, and we feast on beets and eggplant and, well, everything. That garden's got everything. When we harvest, eventually we get to a point where all is harvested except for 1 or 2 plants, which have gone to seed. Those seeds are there dropping, literally dropping, or sometimes we knock them off. And the seed then is taken and put in that dry and that cool place until the next time for planting. Now you see, we've gone through that cycle, all the way around that planting cycle. But let's go on to talk about the seed a little bit more. The seed has a covering around it. Think of a bean seed. Everybody knows beans. You cook them up, but they're the seed. They actually are a seed. Anybody know what that covering is called? Well, it makes sense. It's the seed coat. And that seed coat protects the life that's inside that seed just bursting to come out. Inside the seed, there's a bunch of nourishment. I like to call them G rations, growth rations. Not the real thing, but enough to get that seed when it's in darkness and has no light for food and nourishment, enough to get that seed to the next point. Also an embryo that does two things. It reaches down into the ground, roots first, and then begins to make its way up as a shoot that eventually pokes through the soil. So we've got roots and shoots. That's the cycle of growth, the seed cycle. Did you note that a couple of things that happen there is that there's some time in darkness? We'll talk about that. But let's go on and talk about it as a metaphor for our growth, for our spiritual growth. And that's really where I want to go today. That metaphor is talked about in the Christian scriptures in John. There's a quote in the 12th chapter of John that says, "Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." The poet Rumi takes it a little further in terms of explaining it as a metaphor and says, "Have you ever seen a seed fall into the earth, not rise with a new life? Why should you doubt the rise of a seed named human?" So that's where we're going to go today. You that are with us online, you are a seed. You are a divine seed in the world. Put together a key spiritual truth. Here it is. With care and attention, the divine seeds that we are will surely grow. With care and attention, the divine seeds that we are will surely grow. Now, first the seed. The seed that we are, like seeds in the garden, doesn't arrive fully grown. For us, we don't arrive fully grown physically, nor do we arrive fully grown spiritually. However, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, more so than physical having a spiritual experience. We have the protection, like the seed coat, of what some have called a skin suit. That's our body. We have G rations, not growth this time, but God rations. And those rations are what we have inside of us that protects us even when we're not thinking about growing, even when we're not actively pursuing our growth. So those God rations are the legacy that we have from the divine. The divine is within us. Like we spoke of in that reading from Meister Eckhart, the divine within us. That's our God rations. That's there, always there. We then are rooted in the perfection of creation. Remember those roots going down? The same thing is true with us. We become rooted in creation. Sometimes we don't even know it. We're not really aware of it. And it is our very nature to grow and expand. All of nature wants to expand, to become more. And the same is true with us as we look at our spiritual life and growth. We do some of that expansion just naturally, because our nature to grow and expand. And that's how far we're going to take it this week. You got to come next week because we go further with this. We get back to that, at least part of that key spiritual truth. The divine seeds that we are will surely grow. The question is, how much will they grow? Let's go on. So after the seed, do you remember the metaphor from the garden? The seed goes into the ground, gets dark. the seed dies. At least that appearance of the seed, that seed coat, and eventually some of the first seed leaves, they're going to die. And that's really painful sometimes. Well, most of the time it's a little painful. So we, as we go through life, encounter difficult circumstances. It's kind of like a little bit of dying. We have losses. We lose ourselves as we knew it. We're becoming something else and we don't yet know what that is, and we lose ourselves. It's a little painful. We may even enter what's called the dark night of the soul. We may have a spiritual practice going. We may be making choices that help us grow, but we still get a darkness for a period of time. But it's with purpose, that darkness. For those of us who attended the class on life visioning, Michael Beckwith has a lot to say. He has a whole chapter on the dark night of the soul. And I just want to share that. But by the way, if you haven't read that book, we're going to kind of get back and recap it in about a month from now. Get the book in between and come back and recap with us. It's a marvelous book. And it really is where we're at, as we have a vision for growth at Unity of Payson. So I recommend it highly. But this is what Michael Beckwith had to say about that dark night of the soul. It's very positive. The dark night of the soul is a profound movement in consciousness that unravels the entanglements of ego, metaphorically bringing us to our knees by taking us through a seeming disintegration, so that we may reintegrate at a higher level of consciousness. All that darkness gives way to life, to reintegration at a higher and a much more productive and a much more obvious level. Sometimes it takes time. That night, dark night of the soul, or that period of grief, it may take some time. Like some seeds, I think beet seeds, they went in the garden almost 3 weeks ago, and they still aren't showing very much. Some of them take a long time. Some of them take a shorter time. Tomatoes were up in 4 days. So be patient. Be at rest. The seed rests in peace. There is a new us that is about to be grown and about to be known. Lao Tzu counsels, nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Key spiritual truth again, the divine seeds that we are surely will grow. Remember it. In the dark times, remember it. That seed that you are, that divine seed, surely will grow. And now we get to the exciting part that we've been waiting for, new life. We're moving from death to life, and we have hope in that. While I was getting ready for this message, my wife handed me something that I don't think I'd ever seen before. It was a little card with a poem on it. It was something that was placed on her mother's casket at her funeral. The inscription is, "To Dorothy in remembrance, with love from her children." The poem is called Gardener's Notes. Can't find the poem, can't find the poet online. But it's really wonderful, and it says exactly what we're saying, that this movement from death, from darkness to light and growth. When sun flames red in the flame dark sky, that is one death away to die. When light snow lies in a snow light heap, that is sleeping, away to sleep. And some will think that we only go to the creeping dark and the shuddering snow. They have not lived with the constant need for light that lies in the sleeping seed and the urge to bloom as the self-same flower in another season, another hour. With age-old petals fresh uncurled to the rising light of the newfound world. For a rose is a rose, though the earth be done. We will see it bloom for another sun. It isn't the end, that dark time. It's only the beginning. The work in that dark time is a rest time. I wish I had learned to rest earlier in my life. I think I'm learning it now. I'm beginning to know when to pause. Beginning to know when to, of all things, take a nap. I'm beginning to know that. I'm beginning to slow down my pace, to pause, to rest. I do remember, however, that I got the truth of this very early in my life. A song that I sang growing up, remember my father's a minister, Baptist minister, was a song taken from the 37th Psalm. Psalm starts out, "Delight thyself in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart." Now, the masculine language, let's look a little deeper than that. We look a little deeper than the words, and we may have to do some translating. But I like the next verse. Oh, here I go again. So rest in the Lord. Oh, yes, rest in the Lord. Just rest in the Lord. Patiently wait for him. Yes, rest in the Lord. Prior to growth, period of rest. When you're putting those roots down deep, even when you're not so much aware of it, or when you are and you're making choices to support that, that's a very positive kind of thing. It's just like that shoot that comes up just after those roots. Something you notice, something to celebrate. So celebrate the roots, celebrate the shoot. As the seed leaves, remember that shoot comes up and there's a couple of leaves that come off. They're not viable leaves in the long run, but they're there to collect the sunlight. Let the process of chlorophyll work to feed that plant. Celebrate that life. Rick in Saturday Soul Boost talked about little ways of experiencing that growth in our life. And then long-term ways. Celebrate every little one of them, not just the big ones. You'll have the big ones too. Take in that nourishment now that you can receive. Take it in. And we'll get to how we do that. Now, it was roots and shoot before, now it's roots and wings. We're moving forward. Life is coming. Now that new life is apparent, and it's especially apparent in community. In that community that supports and loves you. In this community, Unity of Payson. That life is apparent and to be celebrated. So dance. So today, we had a little dancing and a little shaking up here. That's celebration of life. We're looking forward to Easter in a couple of weeks. We celebrate life again, but celebrate the little evidences of life, even the shoot when it's small, or the sprout, because we've gone from seed to sprout. That key truth again, with care and attention, the divine seeds that we are will surely grow. And now we get to one of my favorite parts. How do I do that? Well, today, a lot of it's not something that you actively do. So it's a little different kind of doing. And I suggest 3 things that we do. Number 1, we're patient. We do that resting. So if you're in that dim or dark place, just like we at Unity of Payson have been in a dim place ever since COVID and lots of changes in our community, it sometimes seemed dim. But remember, that's the predecessor to life. So be patient. Well, I'm getting a little impatient. We've noticed it. We've got the start of a vision board over here. Claudette brought something to add to it this morning. I've got another thing that'll add. But these boards, take a look at them. They're indicative of where we're heading. Because not only are we patient, we are aware. Again, not an active kind of thing, but you're aware that that growth is there for you to have. That growth is there for you to be. And then the work of celebration. Thank you to everybody who did gratitudes here this morning. That's a kind of celebration. Don and I do that every night. We have a gratitude practice, and perhaps you have a gratitude journal or some other gratitude practice. That's a celebration of new life. So be patient, the work of patience, the work of awareness, and the work of celebration, however the small the celebration may seem to be. Now, we're cooking up a celebration here. It may be Unity of Payson and a bunch of other people too. But that farm that I talked about, Shanti Homestead, that's been open to us, thank you, Ram, for a celebration. Beginning of April, we haven't exactly finalized the date yet, but we're working on it. We're going to celebrate life. Beautiful time, not long after the equinox. Light is coming. Nourishment is coming. And we're going to get ready to receive it. We're going to celebrate it. So let me circle back to that cycle of growth that we talked about. Back to the garden seed through the sprout. This is today. Come next week, we're going on. We're not going to stop there. But this is the new life. Be aware of it. Be patient for it if you need to. And celebrate it. The key spiritual truth again, one more time. With care and attention, the divine seeds that we are will surely grow. And so it is.